Back in the day, I moved to Spain on a tourist visa. I don't recommend anyone do this, but I was 21 years old, mostly broke, talentless, and incapable of planning for the future anyway. My basic plan at the time was overstay my tourist visa first, figure out how to get legal later. Luckily, this happened to be 2004, right in the middle of the golden age of immigration to Spain. The economy was booming, and thousands or millions of people were arriving just like me, hoping to work hard for a monthly envelope full of illicit 20s and 50s, and planning to deal with whatever the consequences were later. Eventually, in my case, it worked out. I got help from a few people and did a long process called arraigo social. Today, I'm a fully legal, long-term resident. It was my first taste of Spanish bureaucracy, and I was young enough not to care about the result. If Spain didn't work out, I could always go somewhere else. But through the whole process, cheap Spanish lawyers in dingy offices were telling me, your best bet is just to marry a Spanish girl. I didn't take them seriously. It usually seemed like they were joking. Plus, I didn't believe in the institution of marriage, and I also wasn't getting a lot of good offers. Why not? Well, I didn't have a mullet or a car to make out in, and my parents didn't have a beach house in Benidorm. I was so far from being husband material, it was a joke. In any case, it's a popular sitcom trope. Citizenship marriage. Just do a quick city hall wedding and everything will be all right, thinks the TV writer from the wealthy suburb in Connecticut, who's never seen the inside of an immigration office. The reality, if you've ever tried to register an international marriage or talked to someone who has, is quite different and much more time-consuming. I'm Daniel Welsh, and this is Spain to Go. I hope you're having a great day wherever it is you are in the world. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit more about Spanish bureaucracy, getting married, registering a civil partnership, renting a flat, even proving that you live at an address. It's all a bureaucratic ordeal that you may have to deal with if you live here in Spain. This is episode 52, I think, of Spain to Go, and I am very happy that you are here listening. So without further ado, let's get down to business. La Vanguardia, a Catalan newspaper, has today published a long report on fraud in the pareja de hecho system in Catalonia. It's interesting reading, particularly because I've been through that system myself. Here's the story. Morena and I moved to Barcelona because she'd been offered a job up here. We were living in Madrid previously. Soon after we arrived, we visited a lawyer to ask about renewing her work permit for the following year. The lawyer, long story short, said it wasn't going to happen, and that she'd have to apply for a new visa some other way. I contemplated the idea that Morena might be deported and immediately cast aside my reservations about bureaucratizing my love life. Let's do the pareja de hecho thing, I told the lawyer. Pareja de hecho is a civil union or a civil partnership. It's not quite the same thing as marriage, but it gives you some of the basic rights of married couples. Little did I know, however, what pareja de hecho turned out to mean was that we were going to spend a year or so doing a family reunification visa, consisting of the following steps. 1. We registered our civil partnership, aka pareja de hecho, with a Barcelona notary. 2. An architect was sent by the city to see if our living conditions were adequate. Ours were, but of course they have to check. You hear about situations where 7 people live in a studio apartment all the time. 3. Morena's current residence permit expired and she flew back to India for several visits to the Spanish embassy in Mumbai. This part may only have been because I was not a Spanish national. If I were, I have the feeling it would have been simpler. 4. Meanwhile, I presented a bunch of papers about my financial solvency, etc., to the various immigration offices here in Barcelona. And 5. We waited for a few months and hoped for the best. In the end, it worked out okay. Morena got back to Spain with a new visa at the end of February 2020. The only hitch was when all the police stations were closed for several months due to the COVID situation, and she couldn't apply for her final ID card. It wasn't exactly clear if she was legal or illegal at this point. She had passed the cutoff date for when she should have applied for the ID card, but in the end, since everything was closed, they gave her a pass and it was fine. La Vanguardia's article exposes the seedy underbelly of this pareja de hecho system, in which people are charging several thousand euros to register fake civil partnerships. Apparently, they have a whole process set up. A friendly lawyer will find people willing to register a pareja in exchange for some money. They'll also find a landlord who will add complete strangers to the padrón in exchange for more money. After that, there's other bureaucratic things that they have to do, but apparently a lot of people are becoming legal illegally through this process with the fake pareja. Registering the partnership in front of the notary is the easy part and is basically no questions asked. Ours took about half an hour and only cost around 150 euros. Apparently, though, the ease of setting up a pareja de hecho in Catalonia is bringing foreigners in from far and wide to do the simple process with the notary. Other parts of Spain require a year or two of living together. The law changes from one comunidad autónoma to another. Morena and I were just lucky that we moved to Barcelona and this was possible. We had no idea before getting into it. Anyway, I'm not giving any sort of legal advice here because, of course, I'm not a lawyer, and all this stuff is pretty confusing. Also, it might change at any time. I do, however, recommend that you talk to a good lawyer before getting involved in any sort of Spanish bureaucracy, and don't do anything illegal. But all this begs the question, why is it so difficult to get married in Spain? People have been getting married for a long time. It's one of those basic things that most people tend to do, at least once in their lives. So why does Spain make it so difficult? I know of several couples who have discovered that they can get married from one day to the next in other countries, and have done so, rather than wait out the years-long bureaucratic nightmare in Spain. The fraud in parejas de hecho in Catalonia is only becoming popular because it's so difficult and time-consuming to register elsewhere, and they don't necessarily make it easier if you're getting fully married. Once again, I'm not a legal expert, but even Spanish people have trouble with the bureaucracy involved in getting married, and for foreigners, everything is, as always, much more complicated. A couple of years have passed since we got the pareja de hecho, and now that Morena and I are officially married in India, I'm working with yet another lawyer to get the situation recognized in Spain. According to him, this could take months or years and might not work at all, but we can try. If our application is rejected, we can always go and get remarried in Gibraltar or Denmark, two places that make marriage easy to do, and try again with a new marriage certificate. Anyway, I hardly want to make this whole podcast about how Spanish bureaucracy sucks, but I've got a couple of final points here. For example, don't sign an 11-month lease. Thinking about this whole situation, I remembered another difficulty we had with the family reunification thing back in the day. We'd signed an 11-month lease on our flat in Barcelona, which turned out to be invalid as a permanent place of residence. We didn't know anything about this, of course. We just needed a place to live. So after we'd started the whole visa application process, a woman from City Hall called and said they couldn't inspect our house because we weren't living there full time. No, we definitely were living there full time, I explained. This place was about 35 square meters and located on a plaza filled with schizophrenics, but that's another story. Well, she said, not according to your contract. I wasn't sure what the City Hall woman meant, so she explained the whole thing to me. What? You want us to move? I shouted, as politely as I could, when she was done. Well, no, she said. Just talk to your landlord about extending the contract. I'm sure you can work something out. Our landlord, or technically landlady, was having none of it. With a 12-month contract, we'd have basic tenants' rights, and she wasn't going to sign anything like that. So we moved, expensively, to another tiny place a few blocks up. Which brings us to another aspect of the problem here. It's really hard to rent a flat in Spain. Smaller towns might be different, but in Madrid, Barcelona, and other Spanish cities, renting is quite expensive, and the landlords tend to ask for a lot of deposits and other silly requirements. Of course, they just want to protect their investment, but the whole system ends up exploiting a lot of people who don't have other options. There's also the issue of the language gap and people who don't have knowledge of how the system works. El Periódico, a newspaper called El Periódico, reported back in 2018 that 12% of people in Catalonia were living in some sort of infravivienda, the polite word for an overcrowded hellhole. That 12% increases to nearly 50% if you're talking about people born outside the European Union, which is just shocking. These infraviviendas may be illegally occupied, seriously overcrowded, and may have multiple people sleeping in shifts in one bed. They call it the cama caliente. That really puts my landlord problems into perspective. All this real estate and bureaucracy is stupidly inefficient and expensive, but Morena and I have enough income that we can handle it. The people paying some mafioso or corrupt lawyer to set them up with fake documents, or a fake pareja, are probably borrowing that money from some other mafioso back home, with implications that are not pleasant to think about. Then they try to rent a place, and the landlord wants thousands more as a deposit, or doesn't want to let them sign up for the padrón, the official paper you need for literally everything else, because it will complicate his own attempts at tax fraud. Anyway, it's all a large and complicated situation which deeply affects the lives of a whole lot of people here in Spain. But luckily, the good people in the government are working hard to solve the problem. Oh wait, they're not. In reality, they've spent the last few months trying to get Catalan accepted as an official language for use in the EU Parliament, something which, in all honesty, affects no one. Oh well, that's about all I've got for today. I hope you're having a good day wherever you are. I have definitely mentioned this before, but here on my block in Barcelona, I've got several ocupas of my own. They're not my ocupas, but they are nearby. We have an episode of the podcast about it. It's episode 39. They're a family, apparently, living all together in an old bakery. The bakery was abandoned for a few years. They broke the lock on the door, and now they're living there. They don't seem to be any sort of mafia, and there don't seem to be people renting, coming and going from this place. But then again, I don't really know. All I see is what they're doing out on the sidewalk in front of their house. They sit around having a sort of block party. They ride their bikes out to collect scrap metal. The job is called chatarrero, and it's a whole urban subculture around here. Anyway, the only time these situations become newsworthy is when one of these houses catches on fire and people die, which has happened twice in the last couple of years. So I hope that doesn't happen in this case. There are news articles where it reports that this is happening in a couple of hundred places around Barcelona, a couple of hundred commercial spaces which are occupied in this way, often old bank offices from before the economic crisis when all of the banks consolidated and 3/4 of the bank offices shut down. It's a situation, and hopefully the government will get off their collective asses and do something about it at some point. Anyway, once again, thank you for being here. Please like and subscribe. Give me some star ratings if possible wherever you listen to this podcast. Go to expatmadrid.com/donate and you can donate some money to the cause here. I do this for free because I enjoy it and because it gives me a chance to practice writing in English. I write in Spanish all day long for my real job, and writing in English is a welcome break from that, but I would definitely appreciate your assistance to keep this free forever. So expatmadrid.com/donate. You can contact me also through expatmadrid.com, the blog. There's a lot of articles on there that do not make it to the podcast, but they could be entertaining. They're just not quite as Spain related or whatever. By the time I finish writing them, I just don't feel like recording them as a podcast as well. Stuff like that. Anyway, from sunny Barcelona, have a wonderful day and hasta la próxima. Bye.